So if you've ever been to visit us at the Abbey, we do the refuge and bodhicitta prayer at least twice a day. We cultivate bodhicitta. We think about attaining full awakening for the benefit of all beings. We do this throughout the day. And then, as we all know, things happen. That motivation gets a little bit, shall I say, lost. And then, as Venerable Children says, we fall down and we pick ourselves up again. So I've been saving this article for a day like this for quite some time. Well, not too long, but it's a stunning example of someone who's actually not Buddhist. And he did something that I think we'd all aspire that we could do and will do in every moment. So sadly, we heard about the shooting at the Jewish synagogue in Pittsburgh, October 27th. And this is, like every shooting happens in this country and throughout the world, when people die in a violent, unnecessary way, it's profoundly disturbing and sad and grievous. And then on November 4th, this extraordinary story was posted. Maybe you saw it. So I'm not going to read the actual story from the newspaper. The newspaper carried this person's Facebook post, which captures the whole story and more. And so I think it's just totally inspiring as spiritual practitioners in any faith that can we do what this person did? So the title of the post is, I am the Jewish nurse. Yes, that Jewish nurse. The same one that people are talking about in the Pittsburgh shooting that left 11 dead. The trauma nurse in the ER that cared for Robert Bowers, who yelled, "Death to all Jews," as he was wheeled into the hospital. The Jewish nurse who ran into a room to save his life. To be honest, I'm nervous about sharing this, the author says. I just know I feel alone right now, and the irony of the world talking about me doesn't seem fair without the chance to speak for myself. When I was a kid, he says, being labeled the Jewish anything undoubtedly had derogatory connotations attached to it. That's why it feels so awkward to me that people suddenly look at it as an endearing term. As an adult, deflecting my religion by saying, oh, I'm not really that religious, made it easier for people to accept I'm Jewish, especially when I tell them my father is a rabbi. I'm not that religious is like saying, oh, don't worry, I'm not that Jewish, therefore I'm not so different from you. And like clockwork, people don't look at me as awkwardly as they did a few seconds before. I experienced anti-Semitism a lot as a kid. It's hard for me to say if it was always a product of genuine hatred, or if kids with their own problems found a reason to single me out from others. Sure, there were a few Jewish kids at my school, but no one else had a father who was a rabbi. I found drawings on my desks of my family being marched into gas chambers, swastikas drawn on my locker, and notes shoved inside it saying, "Die, Jew. Love Hitler." It was a different time back then, where bullying was not monitored like it is now. I was weak too. Rather than tell anyone, I hid behind fear. Telling on people who did this would only lead to consequences far worse. Now, I should say, the photograph of this nurse, I'm guessing he's only in his mid-30s. Like, this is not someone who's, as old as I am. Regardless, the fact that this shooting took place doesn't shock me. To be honest, it's only a matter of time before the next one happens. History refutes hope that things will change. My heart yearns for change, but today's climate doesn't foster nurturing tolerance or civility. Even before this shooting took place, there's no real evidence supporting otherwise. The FBI and the Southern Poverty Law Center note that Jews only account for 2% of the US population, yet 60% of all religious hate crimes are committed against them. I don't know why people hate us so much, but the underbelly of anti-Semitism seems to be thriving. So now here I am, the Jewish nurse that cared for Robert Bowers. I've watched them talk about me on CNN, Fox News, Anderson Cooper, PBS. And I will say the Canadian news, this is where I found the story, and the local news stations. I've read articles mentioning me in the New York Times and the Washington Post. The fact that I did my job, a job which requires compassion and empathy over everything, is newsworthy to people because I'm Jewish. Even more so because my dad's a rabbi. To be honest, I didn't see evil. This is it. He says, I didn't see evil when I looked into Robert Bauer's eyes. I saw something else. I can't go into details of our interactions because of HIPAA, some kind of hospital security, right? Confidentiality, thank you. I can tell you that as his nurse, or as anyone's nurse, my care is given through kindness. My actions are measured with empathy, and regardless of the person you may be when you're not in my care, each breath you take is more beautiful than the last when you're lying on my stretcher. This was the same Robert Bowers that just committed mass murder. The Robert Bowers who instilled panic in my heart, worrying my parents were 2 of his 11 victims less than an hour before his arrival. I'm sure he had no idea I was Jewish. Why thank a Jewish nurse when 15 minutes beforehand you'd shoot me in the head with no remorse? I didn't say a word to him about my religion. I chose not to say anything to him the entire time. I wanted him to feel compassion. Besides, if he finds out I'm Jewish, does it really matter? The better question is, what does it mean to you? Love as an action is more powerful than words. And love in the face of evil gives others hope. It demonstrates humanity. It reaffirms why we're all here. The meaning of a life is to give meaning to life. And love is the ultimate force that connects all living beings. I could care less what Robert Bowers thinks. But you, the person reading this, love is the only message I wish to instill in you. If my actions mean anything, love means everything. Respectfully, Ari Mailer, registered nurse. So this story really got to me. I read another bit of research a couple weeks ago that said that we can start learning racist points of view by the age of 3. We're open to it. Kids can parrot it. They get to learn who's who, and it starts at that age. And so I think as Buddhist practitioners, or any kind of person, actually, a person with a heart, we really have to counteract this when we hear it among others, and we have to be an example to kids when we're in their presence, and really show them that everyone is worthwhile. And recently, in a BBC that Venerable Children gave, she was reading from someone who wrote in, and this is this person's orientation towards encountering racism. And he wrote, "Since 2016, my eyes are set on high alert, sharpened for any sound of bigotry within my proximity. I'm prepared to appropriately and politely shut down racism or hatred." So I think we all have to have this in our mind. We're examples to everyone, regardless of who we are in life. We're older than someone. The younger ones look up to us. We might be in robes, we might not be, but people are looking to, seniors or people in positions of authority as examples. And so this story is striking on so many levels, but I'm wondering, I'm asking myself this question: would I be able to do what he did, to look beyond, what he had just done, and treat him as a sentient being? That's my goal in this life, to get to that point. So let's rejoice in this person's efforts and cultivate bodhicitta in our heart.